God'll get you for that one.
Maude is owned by Shout Factory.
God'll Get You for That, Walter is produced for entertainment purposes only.
Sponsored in part by Finley's Friendly Appliances. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of God'll Get You for That, Walter.
God'll get you for that.
Where we discuss episodes of Maude, a very famous 70s sitcom starring Beatrice Arthur, Bill Macy, and Adrienne Barbeau. Today, we watched the final showing that was Bea Arthur in All in the Family before she went on to star in her own sitcom.
Correct.
And the episode of All in the Family was entitled Maude.
Yes.
Naturally.
Season 2, episode
Season 2,
24.
Episode 24.
For anyone, if you may want to
anyone
watch
keeping
that.
score. And it was a loaded episode.
Yes,
I always
was.
forget how much they could pack into like those 20-some-odd minutes.
I know, yes.
So it started in Queens.
With the bunkers.
With the bunkers preparing to leave for
Carol's wedding.
Carol is Maude's daughter, played by Marcia Rod. Now, it's important to remember that because Adrienne Barbeau was then later cast as Carol for the remainder of the entirety of Maude the sitcom.
Took over the role.
She took over the role. And there's actually a very good reason behind that. Oh yeah. Well, we can address. We can address. So, Archie is obviously furious. I don't want to go. But Edith, of course, is like, no, we have to go because Maude invited us.
Of course.
So they went.
So they go.
And Maude is immediately on the defensive, saying, I don't want Archie here any more than Carol does. So that immediately sets the stage for what is inevitably going to be fireworks. So,
because of course Carol says that she doesn't want Archie there because she knows as soon as Archie hears that
Carol is marrying a Jewish person.
It's Jewish. It's going to be,
going to be problematic.
Good night, nurse.
Good night, nurse. She's marrying a Jew. Literally the line verbatim from both Carol and Archie. Now, one thing I want to point out is Adrienne Barbeau was later cast, and the reason they did that was because Adrienne was younger.
True.
And Adrienne was also more
bustier,
developed.
Yeah.
So it disappointed Bea Arthur only because, and you can even watch it in the episode, the dialogue between Maude and Carol is much more, the way Bea Arthur described it, electric.
Yes.
It felt much more heated. Like there was more tension between Carol and Maude.
The original Carol.
Between Marcia Rod and Bea Arthur than there was between Bea Arthur and Adrienne Barbeau.
Yes, definitely.
That we can certainly address next week when we talk about the first episode of Maude.
Yeah.
So, the episode continues with Archie and Edith getting to... Now, we were also introduced to Maude's husband, Walter.
Still played by
Bill Macy. And once again, like the continuity when it comes to Maude's husbands is definitely...
Oh my lord.
Strange.
Yes.
Because they had mentioned Chester, who died at sea, but Chester didn't die at sea. Then there was Fred and Sean. Fred died of a brain hemorrhage and Bert died of a heart seizure.
Yes.
So it was Fred and Bert. But Fred and Bert never existed.
No.
In Maude canon, Maude's husbands were, if I'm not mistaken, Barney, Chester, Albert, Walter. I think in that order. I could be completely and totally wrong.
They did mention Albert in this one.
Yes, they also mentioned Chester. But Chester was later brought in an episode where they had to sign divorce papers.
Okay.
So just, again, the continuity with any sitcom is very strange.
Hurly-burly and...
Very hurly-burly.
I mean, it's so...
It's one of the... Specifically when it comes to the Golden Girls,
God!
You cannot follow the continuity of that show.
No, not at all.
Because you'll have Angelo, and then you'll have Angelo. You'll have Angela, then you'll have Angelo. Then you'll have all of the kids. Then you'll have all the grandkids. Then the stories will constantly... Just very, very bizarre.
Yes.
So, of all the continuity errors from Maude, her husbands are definitely a point of contention.
That's definitely the sticking point.
That's the sticking point.
Yes.
But the episode definitely it delved heavily with anti-Semitism. It dealt heavily with children being single mothers. It dealt heavily with children in general because they were obviously talking about Philip.
Yes. Women in the workplace.
Women in the workplace. Women marrying.
Mm-hmm.
Just marriage in general was definitely a point of interest in the episode.
And even Walter with calling Carol out for wearing a white wedding dress.
For wearing a white wedding dress, yeah.
When she was
previously divorced.
And
she also has a child.
Yeah. And, sort of like calling her out that she shouldn't be allowed to wear white. And, Carol throwing it back at him that, that's
it's an archaic, sexist view of women, and also having premarital relations.
Yes,
where there's nothing wrong with having premarital sex. It's just, how did Carol put it? It's just a sexist view of women.
Right. That a woman getting married, she's supposed to be a virgin, and the white wedding dress
and
symbolizes
that, pure and wholesome and all that fun stuff.
And the man can be, anything
and the man can do anything he wants.
Yes.
And it was, it's always...
Spread their seed willy-nilly.
Literally. But that's something that was definitely a point that I think Norman wanted to do, is he wanted to make Carol similar to Maude. Not an exact copy, but very similar in terms of views and in terms of morality. Mm-hmm. And of course, Maude being from the 50s, definitely having more of a... I guess we can say narrow-minded view, but still very much liberal and very, very open to new people.
Yes.
And it's honestly, this episode is a much better introduction to the Maude that became Maude.
To the Maude universe.
Basically.
The Maude universe. Oh, I love that. I think, am I the first one to coin that?
You're the first one to coin
that. There's the Marvel universe, the DC universe. Now there is the Maude universe.
So, it definitely is a great introduction to who Maude is as a person, specifically when the plumber, who at the time was working on the plumbing,
the dishwasher
in the household, comes in and says, "I still am owed $15 for a house call." And
let me tell you, I would give a body part if like the plumber was, if it was only $15 for a service call these days. Let me tell you, because literally I just had to have like some pipes in the basement replaced, and like when I made the appointment, they said, "Well, just so you know, it's like $210 an hour." I know.
We love inflation.
Why did I go to college?
But it's true though. You're as the series progresses, you're going to hear us discuss prices during the 70s.
Yes.
How much for a tank of gas? How much for an ounce of weed? How much for... I'm trying to think of like other things that were mentioned as far as prices concerned.
Are we talking about dandelions?
There actually is something. I think it's called the pot story.
Oh, there is one?
There is an episode called the pot story.
I don't remember that one.
It's it's another very, very politically heavy show. It's another politically heavy episode, and that was what I think Norman Lear wanted to do with Maude. He wanted to make her a very politically heavy, strong person. Polarizing. That is a great way to describe her. Polarizing.
I have to give myself a little award for that.
SAT word. You get your winky pin. You get the winky pin. So the episode continues with Edith and Archie coming in, and obviously Archie opening with "Good night, nurse."
Well, the best thing is when they first get there. And Maude is like welcoming Edith, and she just closes the door.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, she I mean, what B. Arthur was really known for: slamming doors in men's faces.
Yes.
Where she did it with Stan, she did it with Archie, and just brilliant. Like, not many people know or are familiar with B. Arthur's physical comedy. But in Maude, she was such a great physical comedian.
Yes.
I think there was even one point where she was drunk in one episode, and she was literally carrying her legs over something. And I'm like, this is absolutely brilliant. She's not John Ritter.
No.
But, who is?
Yeah. No, but now.
But I mean, to see someone that tall and that, it was almost like how they said in an episode, in interviews about the Golden Girls. There were seldom episodes where B. Arthur's character Dorothy became so unglued.
True. And
I think one of the best examples of that was during the, to discuss Golden Girls for a brief period of time. It was the Midsummer Magic, Midsummer something or other, where it's the conversation
when she kissed Miles.
When she kissed Miles, it was the conversation about the cupcakes.
Dorothy, were you and Miles baking?
Exactly, and
her cupcakes were
moist and delicious. Men love my cupcakes.
Dorothy, everyone knows your cupcakes are dry and tasteless.
Let me tell you something, you Swedish meatball. But, I mean, seldom you would see B. Arthur come unglued. But when it came to Maude, there was more... She was able to play a little bit more with the scenery. Mm-hmm. So, I always appreciate when she's able to do more physical comedy, because you don't see it all that often.
No.
But one thing that I love is when she's able to slam the door in people's faces.
Yes, and doing it, right off the bat there with Archie.
It really opens you up to what the character is really going to give you.
I think that just that one instance of, closing the door on Archie's face.
Literally pulling Edith in and then pulling Edith in with one arm and then slamming the door in his face with the other.
It really tells you everything you need to know about Maude.
Yep.
Just that one
frame of reference.
Yes.
And this was also the first episode where Maude used the phrase, God will get you for that, Walter. And again, it was a good introduction to the character.
Yes.
Because, yes, we have Cousin Maude's visit. We know that she's obviously going to be a very militant feminist, very aggressively politically blue, I guess you could say, at the time. And just someone who is very vocal about their political leanings and their political ideations. But it also introduced us to sort of the double standard of the character. Mm. Because while they were discussing Carol's future husband, who is Jewish, Maude was mentioning how Jewish people have a sort of sensitivity.
Yes.
And it was really one of those things where it was like Carol called her out and said, no, that is an anti-Semitic remark, or that's an anti-Semitic ideation. And it really, again, leans into who Maude is as a person, because, again, as I've mentioned in the previous episode, Norman Lear made Maude a quote-unquote bullshit liberal, where you'll have those human qualities, where you'll have the, yes, I am this, I am very much this, but also I'm this way too.
Right.
And,
because she talks about the neighbors, the Rosenblatts. That they were first Jewish family to move into the neighborhood.
And that they were over every night for dinner.
Yeah, they were in and out of the house all the time. And Carol calls her out. She says, but you hate the Rosenblatts. And she says, because they're in and out of the house all the time.
And that, again, it just sort of leans into who Maude is as a person.
Right.
And to see the interaction, I adore Adrienne Barbeau. Mm-hmm. I love Adrienne Barbeau as a character. I love Adrienne Barbeau as an actress. But the interaction between Marcia Rod, who actually later comes back, much later in Maude the series, as an assistant store manager to Walter, as the store manager of Finley's Friendly Appliances. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep. She came back for, I think, one episode. But to see the interaction between, mother and daughter, the way that Carol and Maude were in the first... Mm-hmm. I love their interactions. Mm. I really do. I'm not saying that Adrienne Barbeau and her didn't have that sort of same electricity or same tenseness, but I feel like the arguments between Marcia's Carol and Adrienne's Carol is very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because while Adrienne is very I mean, Adrian was very tough.
Yeah.
She was very headstrong. But Marcia, like, I don't know. I wonder if such a difference.
I wonder if they felt she was too much
I think it may have been too much like Maude.
She may have been too much like Maude and not enough contrast.
Yeah. I feel like Marcia would have been more like Maude.
Yes.
And hilariously enough, well, we'll discuss that when it comes to Vivian, but Doris Roberts was also supposed to be cast as Vivian. But they didn't because Doris was too much like B. Arthur. So for I think one of the reasons was obviously Adrian's physical appearance, but her acting abilities, and she was also a little bit softer.
Yeah, definitely.
And, I mean, that's to her credit. That's still a great character to play opposite of this very strong, husky, like, claws out at a moment's notice Maude. And we're also introduced to Philip for a brief period of time, whom also has, hilariously enough, a very interesting character. Like, not just a quote-unquote dumb kid, but I think there was also an episode where Maude physically strikes the child.
Right.
That was an episode that we're definitely going to get to talk about. But ultimately, the episode continues with what was the husband's name? David.
Yes.
It was David.
Yes, David.
And
they're supposed to. He comes in
and just very, very manic character.
Yes.
Him and Walter go to the bachelor party, and Archie says, "Come on, there's a bachelor party happening at such and such."
Archie won't go because he had to cough up $10.
Yes, Archie wouldn't go because he had to cough up $10.
He was not coughing
up $10.
Right.
Because Archie will pinch the penny until the buffalo poops.
The power of suggestion.
So, the episode continues. Archie stays.
Says he's going to stay.
Says he's going to stay. And then as soon as the party shows up...
The women for the
bridal party.
Shower.
The bridal shower show up. And Maude says, "I have something to show you all." And presents Archie to the group. And then all of the ladies start saying, "Oh, that's so good. That's so..." Like, all clamoring for him.
Yes.
And Archie immediately gets up and says, "I'm going back to the hotel."
Going back to the hotel.
So... Archie leaves, and Edith is left to stay with everybody. And then that's when it cuts to commercial.
Right.
And then it comes back.
And they're all leaving.
All the ladies are leaving. And Maude immediately says, "God, I'm tired."
Right.
Because apparently one of the things that we have to address here is that Maude is a bit of a narcissist.
Oh, definitely.
Where everything is about Maude and nobody else. And that's part of what makes her human. So everybody leaves, and I think that's when Edith goes upstairs to check on Philip because Philip calls down.
Philip's asking for a glass of water.
Philip's asking for a glass of water.
We don't actually see Philip.
We do not see Philip. We just hear him.
We just hear him.
And Edith goes upstairs to take care of him, and then
she's giving him a glass of water. And she's going to read him a bedtime story, which is a convenient plot device to get
Edith out of the way and also make the focal point Maude and Carol. And
we're good.
Oh, we're good. We're so good.
We're so good. I hope you all
appreciate the unison that is us. And the unity between the two of us. But the conversation between Carol and Maude was just, it was so fiery.
Yes.
It was so fiery because they were talking about how many showers they each threw for the other.
Yes.
And it was just back and forth where Maude was unrelenting. And I'm siding with Carol on this one. I'm not siding with Maude on that one.
Oh my.
I know, shocker. The B. Arthur impersonator isn't siding with B. Arthur.
Oh my goodness.
But there are times even watching Maude where I'm just like, oh, that was a lot. Like, they take it down a notch. Take it back a couple of paces. And just, again, the constant back and forth where Maude was saying, "You threw me a shower for Albert and Walter, and I threw you
Walter." Right. She was saying that she threw it for Albert, but not Walter.
Albert, yeah.
And, and Carol was insisting, no, she threw it for Walter, not for Albert.
And then Maude was saying, I threw you a shower for Dennis. Just
right.
And that's another thing that changes is the name of Carol's
first husband.
Okay. Like, again, just continuity errors, that's like minutia. Like, that I can handle.
Couldn't anybody look at a past script just to say, or nobody remembers? What did we name Carol's first husband? No, it's like...
But I mean, at least they took enough care and quality to keep most of the story intact.
True.
Unlike other sitcoms, past and present, that just did not pay attention to the script.
It's like every episode is
every episode's a new adventure,
a completely new universe.
But also, if you noticed, the writers on Maude were more consistent than they were for other sitcoms.
True. Yes.
Also, Susan Harris, who later wrote for Soap and Golden Girls, wrote a couple of episodes for Maude.
Oh, she did?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think she is the two-parter that sticks out in my mind is Maude's Dilemma, which is the abortion episode. Susan Harris wrote that.
Oh, she did?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She also wrote a couple of other, Susan Harris was a very...
Prolific
writer. That's a good word to use. Another SAT word. You're doing so good. You're doing so good.
All of these big words that I never get to use, I'm finally able to use them. Who would have thunk?
So, the episode continues with Carol and Maude arguing.
Right.
And then I think...
That's
when Walter and
David
enter. And they had a wild party.
Yes. And Walter is angry.
Walter is furious.
Because
the police were called.
Right.
That's a plot point, kids. Let's hold on to that for a moment.
Remember that.
The police were called. Walter is mad because the police were called.
And raided the
bachelor party. And raided the bachelor party.
Hold on to that.
Hold on to that for just a moment.
It'll return.
There's the reason. That's foreshadowing.
Oh my God. We're on fire. We're on fire with this episode.
So, I mean, there's a lot. There's so much to digest in this episode.
Yes.
Because it deals so heavily. I think there was even one point in time where B. Arthur said, where Maude said, I planted a tree in Israel.
Yes. Yes.
Where she was, I think because that was when Carol called her out on making the anti-Semitic remark.
Yes, in the beginning of the episode.
Very much earlier on in the episode.
When they were talking about the Rosenblatts.
When they were talking about the Rosenblatts. And then Maude says, I don't know how you could say that to me. I planted a tree in Israel.
That's right. And her accountant is Jewish, her doctor is Jewish.
Her lawyer is Jewish. Every person that Maude comes in contact with is Jewish.
Is Jewish.
And
oddly enough, of course, B.
Arthur is Jewish herself.
Was Jewish,
So it's funny that she ended up playing these characters that were outside the Enter the Matchmaker.
Yeah.
I think the Enter the Matchmaker was the only canonically Jewish character that B. Arthur ever played.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's funny.
I know.
I think that's funny.
I wonder why on Golden Girls they made her and Estelle Getty Italian.
They were
Jewish.
The producers initially wanted to write Estelle and B as Jewish characters, but I think there were other producers that felt that if they made them Italian, they'd be more marketable. They'd be easier to market.
Well, that could be.
They'd be an easier market because I mean during the 80s, I guess there were a lot of Italians, and they decided to make them Italian just for the sake of marketing.
I guess. Now, there were a lot of Italians in sitcoms, like Tony Danza and Taxi, and then Who's the Boss, and all that stuff. So I guess
I guess it made sense.
Yeah. And actually, me, I'm half Italian, half Jewish, and it's like so much of it is like interchangeable. So much of it is interchangeable, but we digress.
We digress. I mean, I'm also Italian and Jewish.
I didn't know you were Italian and Jewish.
On my mother's side.
On your mother's side.
So
we're both pizza bagels. Alexis Flame gave you that.
Alexis Flame gave you that name. Wow.
That said that I'm a pizza bagel.
No, on my mother's side, my grandmother's mother was a Russian Jew.
Okay, that's right. You did tell me that. How did I forget that?
It's potpourri. It's potpourri about Tomcat. Nobody pays attention to potpourri about Tomcat.
It's the gray cells they're wiggling on the vine. They're dying as we speak. By the end of this episode, you may have have to change my Depends.
Stop it now. I'll get your husband for that. I don't do diapers. I don't do babies. So the episode continues with David and Walter coming back to the house and
all
Walter
the turmoil
of the police
bachelor party, rating the
bachelor party. And
Carol is upset.
Carol is very upset because there were girls.
There were girls. Yes.
And David calls Carol out and says, "Well, you're a liberal you're a liberal female.
Right?
How dare you say that I can't have women at my party?" And it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
But that's part of the writing that makes the characters believable.
Right.
And short story long, it ends up coming out that Carol says to David...
Well, what happens is...
Yeah, go ahead.
David is like, going off, and he's going on about, the things that he's done, and he said, and I bought us a house, and
that's right. And David kept on saying, we bought a house. When you quit your job,
right,
you can stay at home and watch the kids. Basically saying all of these male chauvinist pig ideals.
Right.
Basically saying you're going to be at home, you're going to be knocked up and pregnant, you're going to be barefoot and pregnant. Barefoot and pregnant. You're going to be taking care of the kids, taking care of the house. You're going to cook. You're going to clean. You're going to do all this fun stuff.
Right.
And Carol's like, absolutely not. And of course, Maude is like, she'll do it. She'll do it. She'll have the kids. It's all fine.
It's fine.
So, just again...
And then Carol makes the remark about the house.
Makes the remark about the house being a steal or a deal. I think she said it was a deal. Or bargain.
Or that it was a bargain.
That it was a bargain.
Because it was a bargain.
And that
triggers David.
That triggered David saying, well, that's a very anti... Are you... Just... Do you want to see if I bleed?
Right.
Walter, get me a knife.
Right.
I'm like...
And then he asked... And Maude said something, too, and he took it as being anti-Semitic.
I'm trying to remember what
I don't remember what
we literally just watched the episode.
It, but there was so much in it.
There was just
and then he goes
so
to Walter. He's like, Walter, do you want to say something too about it? And Walter says, well, you are talking with your hands.
But then, to turn everything around on its head, David says, I was waiting.
Right.
My mother said that if I had married into this family, I was waiting for the day that somebody would make an anti-Semitic remark. And that
basically that he knew it was going to happen.
Basically that he knew it was going to happen. So Carol ends up throwing in his face, I've made love to you for 2 years, and you've been waiting for this moment?
Right.
That is anti-Gentile rhetoric.
Yeah, right.
And it was one of those moments where I'm like, this is a very human conversation in a very human household.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little cartoony.
Yes.
It's a little cartoony, but it's also a very real thing that happens.
Yes.
Because it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's one of the beautiful things about a lot of Norman Lear productions is that these episodes, these episodic episodes, are very human.
Yes. And I can actually relate a real story that happened to me.
Yeah.
Years ago, when I was married, I was in like a straight marriage, and a relative of my then wife came over, and it was right around the time that the Berlin Wall came down.
Okay.
And this relative, she happened to be German, and said, I don't know how it came up in conversation. And somebody said, well, some people are, they're nervous about it or worried about it. And she said, well, the only ones who are worried about, the ones who are worried about it, the only ones who are worried about it are the Jews. And, and like I looked at my then wife and because she saw, the mercury was like rising. And I gave her a look like, you better put her in her place before I do. And she said, Anthony's, at that time everyone just called me Anthony. And she called me Anthony. No, she didn't call me Tony. But she was like, he's half Jewish. And all of a sudden then she was like, didn't know what to say. And then my then mother-in-law was like, oh, she didn't mean anything. She didn't mean anything.
Deer in the headlights.
And it's like,
deer in the headlights.
It's like, yes, she did mean something. It's like,
I made a post on Facebook. And I basically said, if we could please stop calling Jewish people the Jews.
The Jews, yes.
And the comments on that status were just, I'm Jewish and I think this is wrong. I think this is an ignorant statement to make. And I'm like, it's contextual.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about context. George Carlin was a brilliant, brilliant comedian.
Yes.
And he said it's all about context. It's how you present the phrase. It's how you present the term. It's a brilliant bit of insight. You could find it on YouTube, actually, where he's basically talking about all of these words are words in and around themselves. They may not be nice words, but it's all about the context. Like, an obvious example would be the Jews. Instead of saying Jewish people, saying the Jews.
The Jews.
And again, it's all
about, it's the way
it's said. It's all context. It's all about contextual.
Because I've heard that's, I've had experiences. I've heard that said in my presence. And when somebody is saying it that way, like the Jews, it's there's
there's
venom behind that. Yeah, exactly. It's not being said. In
a nice way.
It's
not being said in a pleasant way. It's being said in a very confrontational, antagonizing way.
Yeah.
And, again, conversations like this are happening every day.
Yes.
Conversations like this are happening in every household. And it's just so wild to see this sitcom from the 70s. And I think if that was episode 24, then that means that was in 71.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 71, which means that Maude was released in 72, or that following sitcom season. That following
back then,
season,
which always started in September.
Always started in September. So it was that there was the period of time in the summer. Then in September, that was when Maude was released.
Not to digress, but I remember that as a little kid, especially Saturday morning cartoons.
Yep.
You waited with
bated breath
for September to start, and the new Saturday morning cartoons. I can remember, getting the TV guide and see what new cartoons were going to be coming on, and it's like I planned my day. I was it's like this at 8, then this at 8:30, then at 9 I have this, and it was like from 8 to 12. It was I woke up, I was usually up before the cartoon started and had to watch something my God, I go back to, I remember when, I would get up so early that all they had on was the American flag, and, there was, the Star Spangled Banner was playing until the actual TV started. But I would have my,
I was going to say, they did that on the radio, too.
Yeah.
They did it on the radio, too, where, if it was around, 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, you would turn the radio on, and it would be the Star Spangled Banner.
Yeah. And I would make myself my, I think it was usually Fruit Loops, was my breakfast cereal of choice. I plopped myself down in front of the TV in my pajamas, and I was, that was it. Watched my cartoons.
Small
That's how it was in the 70s.
Yeah. Also, we apologize if, during our silence you hear a whirring sound. We put the air conditioner on.
Yes.
So
we're large.
We're older women.
We're
older women.
I'm draining my estrogen patch as we speak because of the menopause.
Oh my goodness. So the episode continues.
Yes.
The episode continues with David basically holding his face saying, they make a point, it is anti-Gentile rhetoric. And I think at that point,
they come to the conclusion
that the wedding is off.
Wedding is off.
The wedding is canceled. There's nothing that can be done about it at this point.
Right.
So David leaves, kisses Carol on her forehead, says, we'll talk, we'll figure this out.
Right.
They end up not figuring it out because by that point, they'd already been recast.
Both
David and Carol had been recast at that point.
And we never I don't think David ever comes back.
Nope.
Carol did get remarried in the show, didn't she? Didn't she get married later on in the actual show? No? I thought she did.
I think in the 6th season she may have left and married the person that she was dating at the time. But that was much later on.
Right.
There were episodes where she was engaged, but she never married.
Oh, she didn't.
She never
married. I couldn't remember that. She never
remarried. But again, we'll
get there.
We'll figure it out when we get to it. So that's how the episode pretty much ends with Carol and Maude and Walter basically having this moment together as a family where they're like, well, now what?
Yeah.
And then by that point, Archie comes back.
Well, Edith came down.
Edith came downstairs and said, what was the problem? What are we all laughing about? And everyone tells Edith, well, the wedding's off.
Right.
So then Archie enters, making a big fuss about something or other. And what does he mention but the fact that he had to call the police because there was a big to-do at the hotel that he was staying at.
And that was the whole reason. So Archie was to blame.
So Archie was to blame for the raid, the fight, and the marriage busting up.
The wedding, which Walter is really mad about because he's, paid all this money.
Walter paid a lot of money for the whole,
and he was complaining earlier in the episode,
which is funny because that's something that a lot of people I guess wouldn't notice back in the day. Or maybe they did notice, because I noticed it too. But they're all talking about how sometimes Jewish people are tight with money. Mm-hmm. How they will always look for a bargain. Mm-hmm. When yet they're doing the same thing that they're critiquing this person about.
Right.
So again, it's just another layer of the humanity and the humility in the show. And
Walter's also complaining because he's not Carol's biological father. And, Chester got out of having to,
Chester, who I guess
fork out this money.
In this continuity is Carol's father.
Carol's father, but dead.
But dead. Yes. We will address that when the time comes. But to those curious, I'll take care of it now. Barney is Carol's biological father. Then Barney died. Mm-hmm. Then Maude got married to Chester. Mm-hmm. Then Chester and her got a divorce.
Right.
Then Maude married Albert. Then they got a divorce. I think it was her fastest marriage.
Okay.
Because Albert and her were married for 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then Albert died. Mm-hmm. There's an episode called Poor Albert. We'll get to that. And then Walter is her 4th and final husband.
Right.
And that's what I know from the show.
That's all he knows.
That's all I know. So the episode pretty much ends with Carol commiserating to Archie, saying, "You don't have to say anything. You did nothing wrong. It was all my fault." And then Archie, in his infinite wisdom, says, "You're right. It was your fault.
It was your fault." Yeah.
And again, it was just one of those moments in time where I'm like, "Oh, Archie." Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess you're so lovable, Archie. I want to squeeze you.
I have to wonder, how the All in the Family cast felt about, this whole episode, sort of pushing them off stage.
I mean, I don't know. I don't really know.
I mean, I'm assuming, maybe, because I'm sure they got paid the same amount.
They got paid their money
however much or little they did. So, considering that was at the end of the season, maybe it was sort of we're starting, we're ending.
I think, you know what? If I had to put money on it, if I was a gambling man, mm-hmm. I would probably say that the cast was already told mm-hmm. that this episode was going to be a pilot for Maude.
Right.
And depending on how the ratings for this episode go, will determine if another show is made.
Right.
What I want to know is the conversation that took place afterwards, similar to how it probably went with the other sitcoms, like The Jeffersons. The Bunkers are not mentioned in The Jeffersons.
Right.
Maude. The Bunkers are not mentioned in Maude. Good Times. The Finleys are not mentioned in Good Times.
Right.
So it sort of begs the question, when a new sitcom is made, and I don't know because I don't work in Hollywood. I don't work in sitcoms.
Yet.
The wind is still blowing. But to ask the question, like, how does one go about having that conversation? Where it's like, we're going to make this new show, and then we're never going to talk about the show that it came from previously.
Right.
Like with, I'll use Golden Girls as another example, because there were plenty of spin-offs of that. But there were times when Sophia would show up in random episodes.
Yes.
There were times when Dorothy would show up in random episodes. Blanche, Rose. Some of them would end up in, like, random episodes of Empty Nests, or Nurses, or,
What was there? There was another one?
Golden Palace.
Golden Palace.
I think there was one more.
Was there?
Empty Nests, Nurses, Golden Palace. Nope. I think that was the only three.
I think that was it.
Those were the only three.
Yeah.
So, there were times that, like, Maude, B. Arthur never guest starred on Good Times.
No.
Carol O'Connor never guest starred in The Jeffersons.
Nope.
So it's like, how do you sort of have those conversations? But again, that's the mystery of Hollywood.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was definitely a full episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it pretty much set the stage for what we were getting with Maude. And also, B. Arthur looked much younger in this episode than she did in the previous one.
Yes.
And they also dressed her much more
Maude.
what we know as Maude, with the the long vest. And
I even said when we were watching it, the outfit that she was wearing, I said, "You need that outfit."
I do.
that her velvet jumpsuit.
It was a long green velvet dress, a powder blue blouse with a matching scarf, and I think a pair of regular slacks and flats.
Yeah.
But very long jewelry, and she still had I need to know who I can get to make me that ring. I want her green ring so badly. I may hit up Lolly Cox.
Well, you'll get it. We know you'll get it.
I'll figure it out.
Now, I have a question. Talking about the wardrobe, did she wear like the scarves around the neck? Did she have a thing? Because I remember there was a Maude episode where she got a facelift. So did she have a thing about her neck?
Did she actually? Honestly, there was one. See, the problem is you can't watch some of these episodes as if they're a documentary.
True.
You have to watch it as if it's a whatchamacallit. Do I think she got a facelift? No. I know she got a facelift after Maude.
Mm-hmm.
She got a facelift after Maude, before Golden Girls, sort of, I think, right before Amanda's by the Sea also. Because B. Arthur was in two and a half, 3 sitcoms. There was Maude, there was Amanda's by the Sea, there was also another one where I think this was after Golden Girls, where she played a judge in a sitcom that starred some Hispanic actor whose name escapes me, some Latinx actor whose name escapes me. And then she was in Golden Girls. And then she did guest spots here and there. But she always wore... There were a few episodes where she wore, like, cleavage showing outfits. But she always wore something over it. So there may have been a scar on her neck. Something may have happened to her in her youth that, like, grew, and, like, when she grew up, it sort of manifested. Whatever the case may be. But most, if not all, of B. Arthur's outfits were very comfortable looking. Mm-hmm. She always wore very long vests, long jackets, very billowy. Like, every time she moved, the cape, the flow went with her.
She had a certain style.
Very certain style. Even in Golden Girls, like, a lot of her outfits, she told the costumer, like, I want something comfortable.
Right.
I don't want something that's form-fitting. I don't want something tight.
That was Blanche's.
Blanche was very form-fitting and very, like, very glitzy.
Yes.
Rue McClanahan's wardrobe, Rue kept most of her wardrobe. I think she had it in her contract.
I'm not surprised.
Rue had it in her contract that she would keep all of her costumes.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure Betty White didn't want that one plaid dress, though. do you remember that? That plaid dress?
Hideous plaid dress. Hideous plaid dress.
Oh.
But yeah, that was Maude's style. Like, she never wore dresses. She wore dresses, but it was seldom that she wore dresses.
Yeah.
I can think, like, maybe on two hands on one hand, like, the dresses that B. Arthur wore. I think one was during the telethon where she wore this gorgeous black sweetheart neckline dress with this gorgeous black cape. Just absolutely stunning wardrobe that she had.
Oh, can we also mention Carol was in very 70s harvest gold orange.
God. Such a 70s outfit.
And the pleated skirt. The long skirt. I mean, so 70s.
So 70s.
I did like her belt.
I adored her.
I loved her belt.
Her hairstyle was also very, like,
that
pulled
70s.
forward 70s.
Frank, my husband,
would
probably tell us what that was called.
But yeah, one of the things that I loved about Maude is that her hairstyle hardly ever changed.
No.
Like, she would either get a haircut and it would be blown out, like swept to one side, or she would have like two curls in front. Like, again, very much of her time. Very, very 60s. Her hairstyle was very 60s.
You think that was 60s? I don't know.
Or maybe 50s and it was just blown out.
I don't know. We'll have to
talk to Tony's husband.
We have to discuss with the wig wizard
and
determine. We will have a full analysis and dissection of what exactly Maude's hairdo was.
And Bill Macy, bless his heart, was still having a bald spot.
Yes. Well. Yeah. What can you do?
All of our hairdos, all of our hair is going the way of the dodo.
Thank God we have wigs.
Thank God we have wigs. Oh, thank God we have wigs is right.
Thank God we have wigs.
But I mean, I love this episode of All in the Family because it doesn't focus on them.
True.
No, because it sort of takes us to where things are going to go. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it definitely 100% set the stage for the Maude show that we all are very familiar with, that led to this point. I think one of my favorite things is how even Carol during the episode would say to Walter, like, you are the good cop and Maude is the bad cop.
Right.
Like, if there's a problem, you just say, Maude, sick him. And she does.
She did.
And there was even a point in time, and it happens periodically, where Walter will just say, Maude, sit. And Maude will sit down.
True.
Or Maude will listen to Walter. Mm. And I think that's addressed in a callback episode. But that's a later conversation. But it is an episode where it's pretty much an episode that takes place before Maude and Walter got married. Like, they were still dating at the time. And it's in the first, I'm pretty sure it's in the first season too, but later. That's a later conversation.
We'll get to it.
But yeah, I adored this episode because there were a lot of moments that, again, are still happening today. Like, there's so much staying power in some episodes of Maude. The same way that there are staying power in episodes of The Jeffersons or All in the Family or Good Times. Like, there are times I can just sit down and watch Good Times and be like, yeah, that's happening now.
Yeah. Or
watching The Jeffersons. That's happening now.
Very true. Very true.
So it's definitely one of those moments where I'm like, I wish, and I said this in the previous episode, I will say this probably every episode. I wish that Maude would do better in syndication.
Right.
Just because there are so many quality moments that are happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, maybe
that have happened.
Maybe us doing this.
Maybe us doing this will
pave the way.
Who knows?
So I doubt we'll make any money off it.
Probably not. But you know something? Because even doing Maude Live, when I did Maude Live, my co-stars were like, oh, my grandmother's very excited about this. My parents are very excited to see this. My relatives are very excited to see this. And I'm like, that's fantastic. But what about you guys?
Right.
Are you, my cast, excited about this?
Right.
And even the conversations that we'll have, it's like, these are pretty heavy. There was one episode that we were going to do that, where towards the end, Maude and Walter got into a big fight. And Walter goes to Maude, if you were a man, I'd punch you right in the nose. Mm-hmm. And Maude challenges him, saying, well, why don't you?
Right.
Hit me right in the nose.
Right.
We couldn't do that episode.
Yeah. Because
that's domestic abuse.
Yeah.
And you don't, like, even in my head, I was like, well, I mean, it's part of that episode. And then you have to say to yourself, it may be part of that episode, but it's still very uncouth. It's very problematic. Mm. And that's something that you have to take when it comes to these sitcoms. You can introduce them to a new audience, but you're introducing an old show to a new audience. Mm-hmm. So you're obviously going to get well, that wouldn't fly today.
No.
That's problematic by today's standards. Right. And, you have to ready yourself for that. Like, if Maude wasn't so controversial, we'd be getting Maude merchandise. But there were a lot of parents way back when who would just tell their kids, you're not supposed to watch that. You can't watch Maude. Maude's too adult. Maude's too mature. Right. Maude's too this. Maude's too that. Yes. And then you look at it today and it's like, even when I started watching Maude, I'm like, this is a very heavy show. Mm-hmm. This is a very, very heavy show. Yeah. Like, to the point where I could not watch the first 2.5 episodes, I think the first 3 episodes of the second season, because it dealt with Walter's alcoholism. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't watch it. Mm. I could not bring myself to watch it. And I was like, all right, if it's on, I'll watch it.
Right.
But it's still a very heavy topic. Mm-hmm. So, on the one hand, I get that Maude is a very controversial show. But on the other hand, there have been far more controversial shows since.
Yeah.
And they are still doing very well.
Yeah.
So,
and the Maude show sort of paved the way for other shows that have done episodes about those topics. Like, I mean, even look at
Roseanne,
or Cheers,
where
Sam falls off the wagon and
starts
drinking again. And I remember that got. That show was always very, very light, but it got really kind of
some episodes that got really dark
when they were dealing with Sam's alcoholism. Bet you didn't know we were going to bring up all these other shows. You see, you thought we were just one-trick ponies.
Well, no, not us. Certainly not one-trick ponies. But that's that's part of the charm of the show. It sort of lends itself and bleeds out into these other shows. Mm-hmm. Because again, it's part of Hollywood. If it exists, it's under a microscope. Mm-hmm. If it exists, for instance, when it came to Maude, every episode had to be taken and read in front of the network censors.
Oh, sure.
I think it was probably after Maude's Dilemma. Mm-hmm. Because how they did it, and we'll address this more when we actually get to the episode, but Maude's Dilemma was initially aired regularly. Mm-hmm. Didn't get hate mail, after Roe v. Wade mm-hmm. was passed, mm-hmm. and they re-aired it, the hate mail came flooding in. Oh, yeah. Oh. And there were times when Norman Lear just wouldn't let B. Arthur read it.
Huh.
Because it was that venomous. But then there were some people that she actually had a long conversation with that was like, I understand how you're feeling, but mm-hmm. this is a conversation that needs to be had. And this is, one of the beautiful things about Maude is that it is conversation starting. The conversations are starting because of the episodes that were happening. Mm-hmm. From, slumlords to abortion, to gay rights, to,
child abuse,
alcoholism,
single mothers,
women, just all of these things were happening at a time when it wasn't the norm. Mm-hmm. So the fact that we're able to have this conversation as two queer individuals and sort of address this sitcom that's been around for decades, and to basically say, yes, these conversations are still happening. It's one of the reasons why I'm like, keep on airing Maude, damn it!
Show her.
Just show her off. So, but that was a point of fact. when it came to casting for Golden Girls,
Mm-hmm.
Susan Harris was adamant about getting B. Arthur.
To play
Susan
Dorothy.
Harris was adamant about getting B. Arthur to play Dorothy.
Mm.
That they went through, I think they went through Charlotte Rae, they went through Elaine Stritch, they went through, who else did they try to cast as Dorothy? Just a laundry list of broady type actresses.
Right.
And one of the reasons why they didn't want B. Arthur was because of Maude.
Oh.
Because Maude was such a controversial show that it ended in 78. Golden Girls was in 85. That's 8, 9, 1, 2, 0, 4, 5. That's 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
6 or 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And in 6 or 7 years, the mark of Maude still sort of, I guess, still lingered
Yeah.
for the producers. That when Rue McClanahan finally convinced B to come on,
Mm-hmm.
B was like, all right, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Because at first B was just,
No.
I don't want to, because at the time, Rue and Betty were playing opposite. Rue was going to play Rose, and Betty was going to play Blanche. And Rue called up B and said, this is what's happening. And then B was like, I'm not going to play Maude and Vivian interact with Sue Ann Nivens.
Right.
But when Rue said, no, I'm playing the vamp,
Right.
and Betty's playing the ditz, B was like, okay, I can get behind that. I'm a fan of that. And the rest is history.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we almost didn't get it because of Maude. So it's one of those things that like really interests me about Maude.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the reasons why I continue to watch it. Yes, it's a very hard-hitting show.
Yeah.
But the conversations that are had in the episodes are still being had today.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know how many shows you could really say that about.
Not many.
Not many.
Golden Girls, obviously. Roseanne, definitely. Now, mind you, I'm not a Roseanne fan. I love Metcalf.
Oh, Laurie Metcalf.
I love Laurie Metcalf.
Yes.
I love, not John Candy. Not John Candy.
Not John Candy.
Oh my God! What?
John Goodman.
John Goodman. Thank you. I knew it was a John. But I love Laurie Metcalf. I love John Goodman.
Mm-hmm.
But I never cared for Roseanne Barr.
Yeah, she was kind of.
She's an acquired taste.
Yeah, definitely.
Even in present day, she's still an acquired taste.
But much more so.
But
hence why she was, Valerie Harper.
Way to age yourself there. Way to age yourself there. But I hope that my hope is that this will sort of bring light to this show because it is a good show.
Yes.
And I also found out, this is a bit of potpourri too, that Bill Macy pulled his pants down at an awards ceremony.
Really?
And because of that, the show would never get an award. With the exception of B. Arthur, who won an Emmy. She won an Emmy for, my guess is she won an Emmy for Maude Bears Her Soul, which we'll talk about later. But the show, I think the award ceremony, or the people who ran the award ceremony, looked at Bill Macy and said, Maude will never get an award.
Oh, jeez.
So the show sort of has a very storied history.
Really, yeah.
And I look forward to jumping into it with you guys, and you too, Tony.
I know. I'm having so much fun.
But if you would like to continue to follow us, you can at the God Will Get You for that. Soon to have a Facebook page.
All that good stuff.
God Will Get You for that Wool to the podcast will be available, hopefully, for downloading soon.
Mm-hmm.
If you would like to follow me, you can at that Tomcat on all forms of social media, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, all of it. I'm there. And if you would like to follow Toni Homeperm, you can at...
Oh, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitch, all that stuff. I don't know what I actually do on Twitch, but I'm there.
It's there.
But I'm there.
It's there.
I don't know why I'm there, but I'm there. I just woke up one day and I was there.
And there you were. There you was. But thank you again for listening. Thank you for hearing us. Thank you for listening to us kvetch. And we'll see you on another...
Were we kvetching?
We were kvetching.
We were kvetching.
We were kvetching.
Okay.
And we will see you on another episode of God will get you for that, Walter.
God will get you for that, Walter. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.